You don't want to say it to the camera, though, do you?
No,
To you.
say to me.
Thank you.
You don't have to say hi.
Otherwise, if it, hi, I'm Walter Massey. Next.
Walter, how are you?
I'm fine.
It's really nice to see you.
I'm Walter Massey.
Yes.
Did you know that?
I did know that.
I'm glad you did, David.
And I think everybody who's watching this probably knows that without you having to say it.
Well,
just
you
for
never know.
the people 20 years from now, it'll be helpful. Walter, why did you become an actor?
The hounds are howling. Good. Why did I become an actor? Okay, I guess it was always in me, but I didn't know it at the time. I fell into it actually because I was at MIT doing a skit of stuff. And there was a man in the audience who came up and said, "How would you like to join the Boston Tributary Theater?"
This is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Yep. And I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "No, really." And I said, "I don't think." He said, "Don't worry about it." I said, "Well, I've got a very heavy load. I was taking 3 degrees in 5 years. It was a political thing to do." Yeah, there was, MIT was trying to work out. And anyway, I said, "I've got far too much to do." I said, I even just finished quitting basketball because I couldn't get the time. I'd have to come back to the fraternity house at 9:30 at night and cold dinners and then stay up till 3 in the morning. And I said, "I just can't do it." So he said, "Not to worry. You're not going to walk into the league rooms. You will come and you can, bring your homework or whatever it is you do with you. And then when it comes time to do your little bit there, you could go on and so forth." Well, I started to think about it, and I'd been there a year already, and I hadn't seen anything except Massachusetts Avenue where I was living, the Charles River Bridge, Mass Avenue Bridge, which I had to cross over, and what we called the institute, the factory of MIT, and in the wintertime, unbelievable, the ice on the bridge and stuff. That's all I knew about Boston. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of nice to meet a few people. So I thought, I'll do it. Right. The next thing, I never carried a spear. The next thing I knew, I was in these roles. And I kind of wondered how the hell I was going to do it. The first one, I got in there, and all these normal people started using mid-Atlantic language in the roles they were playing. Nobody told me anything about that, and so forth. And I thought, okay. So I just went in with both feet and tried to do it. The end of the first rehearsal took place, and nobody said anything one way or the other. They said, "Well, we'll meet again tomorrow at such and such time." Then I began to like it. And then my father appeared from Canada, from Toronto, where we lived. Can you believe it? In his morning coat. With the idea of shaping me up some, because I had been getting good marks, but now they were beginning to dive, you see. And he wanted to know why. And he knew I was fiddling around with this stuff, as he called it. So I met him, and I said, at that time, I had landed and was playing Comte de Guiche in Cyrano de Bergerac. And this is a semi-professional theater. Now, they were working people, and therefore they only worked at night in terms of the theater. But they were professional, full-fledged professional actors, doing stuff very often pre-Broadway and whatnot. So, anyway, so I said, "Well, why don't you come and see me tonight? And then we'll talk." Because to do it without that is futile. And he sort of gave me a look, and he said, "All right." So he came, I did, and found a note in my dressing room when I got back. It said, "I will be in room such and so, my hotel." So I went, and there's nothing if not drama in my family. I went up to the room, and the door was open just a touch. I took a look at that, and I thought, here we go. Now, my father was a politician, and an undefeated one, I might add. And he was a wonderful speech maker. But when he was home, he often used the moments of discipline when we would have to go and speak to him to try out a few things on us, you know? And we got terribly used to this. So anyway, I peeked and I opened the door, and there he was, standing in the window overlooking Boston. So I came in, I didn't say anything, shut the door, sat down and decided to wait. Suddenly I hear coming from him, "After all, Walter, you're just beginning to crawl out of a quagmire of a histrionic enigma." I went, what? And he sort of looked over his shoulder and said, "Yes, that is a bit much, isn't it?" And then he turned around, reached into his wallet, took out a $5 bill. And he said, "I know that it's not much." He said, "I just don't have a lot of cash at the moment. Take this and buy yourself anything you like in the theater. But make me one promise. Get a degree. In anything, anywhere, but get a degree. Then go and do whatever you want." I went home to the fraternity that night, and I went past a store. It was sidewalk, just, you know, you see the glass. And in it, I saw this creature. And it was a sock, tied in the center, striped sock, with like one ball on top of the other, with felt feet, and little felt here for wings, and red wool coming out, very surprised eyes, and a tongue like that. I said, "I've got to get that." I came back the following day, and it was there, and it cost me $4.99. And I referred to it as my histrionic enigma. And that stayed with me in the theater for the rest of my life. But I didn't go into it right away. I had to kind of think about that, because the family really didn't want me to go into it. So I suddenly realized things were happening in Canada, and I thought, by golly, I could go into the business of the theater. There's no such thing. So I could go into business. So I went to the University of Western, went into the business administration school. But then, you see, I couldn't stay away from the theater now. So I joined the London Little Theater. I was with the Purple Patches, which I directed 600 people, you know, biggest thing on campus, other than football. And did the drama club and all of that. We went to company. So I took all my electives in arts.
What year would this have been?
Well, this is the thing. I was at MIT from 47 to 50, at Western from 50 to 53, with all that engineering, business, administration, and wound up with a Bachelor of Arts.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. When did you become an ACTRA member?
An ACTRA member goes back, let me see, I got into Montreal more or less permanently in the 60s, but I was before that in Toronto. You know something? I was trying to find this out, what I should say up front, because if I look a little vague, I am. But beyond the normal part of it, I had a robbery in my house some years ago, and they stole all my stuff and records and everything, and some they threw behind a brick wall that got mildewed, and it was a very unhappy time.
Were you doing radio in Toronto before you came
Yes,
here?
I did.
So you would have been a member of RATS, Radio Artists of Toronto Society.
Just after it.
Just after.
I was with it, if you like. Came through it. That's how I got involved with helping with ACTRA a little bit, because by that time I was also American Equity.
Right, yes.
And I was American Equity when it first came to Canada.
Right.
Bill Hutt, you see, had decided in the non-professional theater that it was what he wanted to do all his life, and damn it all, he should be paid. So what he did was demand that he get $25 a show.
Right.
To start with.
Right.
And of course he found out that when people pay for something, they want quality, they don't take it for granted, and they don't fool around with it. So that started it in that sense. But I was at the Maude Franchot Summer Theater at Epworth Circle on the Canadian side of Niagara Falls, that Maud Franchot, Franchot Tone's aunt, started a theater there in a high school auditorium that sat 1,200 people to take road shows in and out because she liked Canadian actors. She thought they were very good. And she needed an outlet for, guess who? Franchot Tone, but a number of people, Helmut Dandine and God knows who all, came through in with their little packages of taking one show for the summer and taking it around to various theaters and that. And he started off the Epworth Circle thing. And she got a deal with American Equity that we could join American Equity for 3 performances, 3 different shows. And you get your like $35 a show. So if you did 3, you were allowed to become a member of American Equity. How's that for good? So that's how we got into American Equity, and of course then Canadian, I was on the Canadian Executive Committee of Actors Equity in Canada. It didn't become Canadian Actors Equity until much later, as you know. So that was all very interesting for me because all our meetings were at 519 Jarvis Street in Raymond Massey's bedroom. Now that's weird. That is weird. Especially as prior to that, I was doing piano and stuff, and I had to give recitals and so on every now and again. And the Mona Bates Studios were at 519 Jarvis Street downstairs.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, I was doing all these.
That was right across from CBC, right?
Right, almost virtually across from it. Yeah.
Is that what became the Celebrity Club eventually, or?
No, right next door. Well, actually, I think it did become. But right next door, across the alleyway, where they had the steakhouse, or still do, I guess. Don't they have that there now?
Don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, and members of the family were in there, and we knew Vincent. And so Raymond was one side of the alley, and Vincent was on the other.
Right.
And we knew all about that house.
Yes,
and I went there.
It became a restaurant called Julia's.
That's right.
And then it became a keg.
And then it became the keg.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I went when it was Julia's. I went there.
Right.
And I said, I think I know something you don't know. He said, what's that? Have you been to the basement? He said, well, there's not much of a basement. I said, oh, really? I went into the main dining room, and I looked around, and sure enough, you could see the cut in the wall. I said, would you let me have those people move? Because if what happens, it would be good for your restaurant to see it, I promise you. Don't wait until it's daytime and come. I said, all right, so we moved the table. And I was able to open the wall.
The false door, the false wall, right?
Which went down to the basement where they weren't rum runners, but they might as well be.
Right. Where
all the booze and everything was kept down in the basement in this cold cellar. And some fruits and vegetables along.
There wasn't booze still left there, though.
Unfortunately. I have a feeling when they're doing, but maybe the workers had discovered it. You know.
I would have said, if I do this and there's a bottle of Chateau Lafite down there, it's mine.
Hey. I would have it right then. Right there. So it's all very peculiar, the way this whole thing with the acting and Raymond, and it's all very strange.
Well, thank you for that story, because I didn't know about the connection, the Niagara Falls connection with the Equity members. And that's
very important, really, because that's always left out.
Right.
And I don't know quite why it is. I think it's because when you get right down to it, in terms of the people that worked in Canadian theatre, I was pretty much the only one that went down, was left.
No, what year was that you were working with that company in Niagara Falls?
You see, here we go.
Would that have been late 50s?
It would, no, I have to, just let me back it up a bit. It would be, I think it was in 1952.
Right.
I think it was in 1952 that I went there, because in 1953, I was with the Shelton Amos Players in the Grand Theatre in London, Ontario, being where I was at Western and all.
At the Grand?
At the Grand Theatre.
Do you know, my first IATSE house was the Grand, before they renovated it.
Yeah.
And and they still had the dressing rooms in the proscenium. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yes.
And nobody else wanted them. They wanted the ones downstairs. And I said, "Are you crazy? Like, there were old easy chairs, and you could had
It was
windows.
lovely up there.
It was lovely up there."
Yep.
And my mother sent me, because my mother had worked backstage. I mean, a stage manager, and she sent me $20, and she said, "Buy your crew chief a bottle of rye." And I went, so I did, and you could then,
Yeah,
I
sure.
was 70 something, and I bought him a bottle of rye, and he went, "Thank you."
Yeah,
I said,
sure.
"My mother said I should buy your crew chief." He said, "Your mother's a very smart
Smart lady. Exactly. Exactly.
So,
But it was. But you see, you had to eventually come down to the side wings because you had fast changes.
That's right, yeah.
You know, you'd have
Now,
to-
how did you get to Montreal? Did you come with a show or
Well,
marriage?
again, it was gradual. I was in New York. I was working in New York. I was doing Brutus and Julius Caesar at that time with the New York Summer Shakespearean Festival, Joseph Papp's Public Theater.
That's a big jump. How did you get that gig?
How did I get that gig?
Yeah.
When I was in London, Ontario, at Western, I had joined the London Little Theatre.
It's a very good company.
Very good company.
Like the Ottawa Little Theatre, but really good.
But it was really good. They seemed to win a lot.
Yes, they did.
In the Dominion Drama Festivals and all that, much to Toronto's annoyance. And if you'll notice, Toronto always leaves them out in their history lessons. No, it's just fun. But no, and I had done well there, and I'd win awards myself and all of that. Nice, you know. And I'd been in the InterVarsity Drama League, which universities competed in, and again, won awards in that. I'm saying this not to do this. I'm saying this for a reason. With that, Bill Hutt actually adjudicated me. Isn't that funny? For one of them, Joseph Schell's Shadow of a Tree, which is a very difficult show. Anyway, the atomic bomb is the tree. Okay. Anyway, and I was able to play the piano as well as act in that. That was kind of fun. But he gave me the Best Actor award for that. Well, the director, Blanche Tancock was her Broadway name, but she married an insurance man from London and became Blanche Hogg, William Hogg later. She married. And she was the director. She was fabulous. If she acted, she would win the awards. If she was directing, all her plays won the awards. She's one of these people. And she used with me the Stanislavski method, except I never knew it. She never gave a name to it, but she directed me, and I worked so well with her. We battled sometimes. It was wonderful. At the end of it, she said the one thing that changed my life. I hadn't considered it. I thought of it, but not considered it. She said, "You know, I've never said this to a young actor." And she said, "I hope I don't regret it here." She said, "I have a feeling that you might make a modest living in the theater, in the show business, if you wanted to take it." Oh, that's all I needed to hear. I went straight to New York full of vim, vigor, and vitality, and was out of work for 2 years. The best thing that ever happened to me, because it took my head and brought it down to size. I really thank God for that time. Well, in that time, I was with the neighbor. Somebody would say, "What's your action?" And I'd say, "Well, I come in and I take the." No. What is your action? I didn't know what they were talking about. And of course, they were talking Stanislavski. So I thought, obviously, to get around, I've got to know something about this. Well, I found out Sanford Meisner in the neighborhood playhouse. And they had a school that was not, they obviously, the neighborhood playhouse was the school, but they had courses that he took of professional people.
Right.
And so I thought, there's where I start. So I joined that. At the same time came up, I heard that Harold Clurman was opening a professional workshop now, not classes, workshop for people in show business after the Broadway theaters closed, so that the Broadway theater people who wanted to join it could, late at night. I thought, oh my. So I went to see him, and I couldn't get in right away. I was put into his wife's class, and didn't like it because she took a shine to me, which was the wrong thing to do because I wasn't going to learn anything.
Right.
And so everything I did had a sexual edge to it, and so I made up a thing where I was working from 4 to 8. I mean 4 to 12 in that 8-hour period.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to get to her classes. So I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
She took the bait and said, well, why don't you go and see Harold? You ought to audition. Well, you had to have 5 years experience on Broadway to get into that workshop.
Right.
Except for 2 slots he held open for young people who might want to try. 2. 1,200 people applied for that.
Wow.
And I got in.
Wow.
So I was taking beginners' problems and stuff with Sanford at the very same time that I was taking the finished product with Clermont. My attitude being, if it was any good in the beginning, it should work out at the end.
Right.
Because I was trying to find out what was going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did go to try and get into Uta Hagen, but she wouldn't take me, so that was the end of that. Are you okay? So that was how I got into the show business to start with. It was out of that I was taken in to play Brutus and Julius Caesar for Joseph Patt, because they had people who could come and watch and not be part of it.
Right.
And just like MIT, somebody happened to be there. Now in Clermont's class, somebody happened to be there.
So you get to do the first production of the New York Shakespeare Company in the park.
Yes, sir.
And then how did that get you to Montreal?
Well, I thought I was only going to be doing Julius Caesar, okay? Wonderful. So I thought that was half the summer, but that meant I was out of work for the rest. And precisely at that time, Joy Thompson, who was a lady that most people don't really know anymore, but she came from a very rich family. She was a marvelous set designer, did some things on Broadway and all that, but she wanted to produce Canadian theater, and she started Joy Thompson's 10th Theater in the Laurentians here, and was started in Saint Adele and also moved up to Saint Agathe. And she'd had a problem with her leading man, and she came down to New York to bring somebody up. She thought she was going to bring up an American. Found me and asked me if I would come. Well, I couldn't have been more relieved, because that meant I had work, and not only that, got paid for it, because you didn't get paid for that first thing that I did as Brutus and Julius Caesar.
Oh, really?
No, nobody did. They let Equity let it happen just to help him get established there.
Interesting.
So yeah, exactly. But now I needed to eat a little. So I accepted it, signed the contract, when suddenly they turned around in the public theater and asked me if I would stay on for the park and do Taming of the Shrew. Do you know with whom? Colleen Dewhurst.
No, I thought it was going to be her, so.
No, Colleen Dewhurst, which I said I have to turn down. They took me out to dinner. They tried every way possible to get me to do that thing. But I said, how would you like it if I'd signed a contract with you? And then somebody up here said, I want you. And then I said, bye-bye, I'm doing it especially just before their opening. I said, I won't do it. I said, that takes away my credibility. I thought back, did I do the right thing? But of course I did. And do you know why? I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right. And
I got myself to Canada through that.
Right.
Because as I was doing that, then CBC in Toronto opened up, you see, and I was still living in New York, but every time I'd come up and down, I was working live television in Toronto. For 2 years I did that, and successfully I made a living.
That was the days of festival?
Yeah, all that.
All that. So you arrive in the Tent Theater in the Laurentians, and you do those, and did you work in Montreal itself at all?
Not then, but as a result of that, what I didn't know at the time was Joy Thompson had started a theater called the Mountain Playhouse. She abandoned it to start one in Knowlton, and then let all that go because she got too interested in New York and her set designing and all of that kind of stuff. And Norma Springford, who happened to be, yeah, good old Norma, happened to be her secretary at the time, you see. And she gave the Mountain Playhouse over to Norma. So Norma asked me if I'd be interested in coming to the Mountain Playhouse. Well, I was still working in Toronto and doing, you know, all this bit and piece and stuff in Toronto. But in coming to Montreal, I saw the whole thing opening up, because that was when professional theater and stuff was really beginning to dig in. And there was nothing that tied it together, really. And so I'd been working with Equity in Toronto and ACTRA, and then it all kind of got transferred into Montreal and the start of all of that. And I just saw that this was probably the most exciting place to be, so I finally packed out of New York and came up here. I was getting to dislike New York. There was you never dislike New York, but there was an attitude that was running through it that was very self-serving, and you know, in our business how that can happen. It's not there every minute of every day, but when it does take hold, it's not nice, and it's a bit of rot that's very hard to get rid of, and I didn't want to be part of it. I really didn't. As a human being, I didn't want to be part of it. When I saw all this magic happening, you know, where I could be, you know, doing, and Larry McCants, as our executive director in Toronto, he and I got along like a house of fire, old Irishman. And I wound up really tight with him, and between the two of us, all kinds of things were happening. There are a lot of stories that go on about how Equity got started here and so on. And whatever turns you on is fine, but sometimes I just worry. But for example, there's a story about how AGMA got started. The basic story is true, but it happened before the person involved said it did.
How what got started?
AGMA.
AGMA.
Yeah, American Guild of Musicians
all right.
and Artists, right. Sorry, I'm too used to using these things. And when we were getting ready to try and transfer out of American Equity into Canadian Equity,
right,
I was all part of that with Larry McCants going down. And the story of walking down Broadway, thank you, was me and the executive director of Equity in New York. Now, I'm not saying there weren't two walks down Broadway, but this was the first one, certainly. And the idea was that we could take on the musicians as well.
right.
And it was not very hard to do. And what was kind of fun for me was to go down at one time, and when Bickel was, Theodore Bickel was had the whole thing, and he had to go somewhere. And he invited us after our convention and all of that to come and see a meeting. Well, that was fine. We thought that was good because we hadn't actually been to a meeting that New York people do. And so we decided to do that, and he looked at me and he said, "And you're going to chair it." I beg your pardon? You're going to chair the meeting. I said, but he said, "Oh, you'll be fine." And I walked in, most fascinating meeting, because it was 2 days. The first day, everything seemed to work very well. And in the second day, all hell broke loose. And people were walking out and whatnot. We broke at one point, and Angus Duncan, who was the General Secretary of Equity in New York, I said, "What is going on?" And he said, "Well, did you not see who was in the first meeting?" I said, "Well, yeah. And what's in this meeting?" And I didn't click. He said, "Meeting yesterday were with stage actors virtually. They're used to long rehearsals, tryouts, coming in, building a character over several weeks, sometimes months. Today, you are with the media, television people.
Right.
One chance to get it right,
Mm-hmm.
several million people watching it,
Right.
and no chance to cut, stop, and play over. And he said that's exactly the difference in the attitude. Relaxed yesterday, knowing time.
No.
Today, has to happen now.
So now one meeting was equity. The first meeting was equity.
No, they were both equity at this point.
But was equity representing media people at that time? This
No.
was pre-SAG or
No. But they were people that worked a lot.
in daytime TV? And
In
stuff like
daytime
that?
TV. It's a
I
good
gotcha.
clarity, gotcha.
Right.
Yes, no, it was loaded with people. that-
Was Alan Eisenberg an assistant at that point? Can you remember?
Don't remember her.
All right.
No.
So
She might have been, I don't know.
That's a very interesting aspect of the story. I mean, I knew that you were involved
Yeah.
with the equity thing because,
Yeah.
of course, it was a big deal for us in Canada.
It was
It was
huge.
huge at the time.
It was, the way they looked at it was since Montfranco had gotten us in there, they had to deal with a whole group of people that dealt with government funding.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about that. Ford, used to back them up a lot in commercial stuff, but they didn't know it. And you guys, you know so much more than we do. Take it was the attitude. Go, we'll leave you.
Well, I remember that the CAW breaking off from American Auto Workers was a big deal too, and I
Yeah.
think there was a lot of nationalism involved in,
Yes, sir.
in these things. Now, who in the early days of CBC Montreal, you must have done a fair amount of work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? What was that like?
Really scary in a way, because it was so new.
Right.
And you get up there, having just done your script and whatever, and rehearsals and technical and whatever, and suddenly the rug is out. You're on the runway, and do it. What do you do when you're sitting on a couch beside a woman, supposedly in a tender moment, and a Klieg light falls right between the two of you?
Right.
And I gave perhaps one of the worst ad-libs in my life when I said, "Love, I keep telling you, you've got to get these lights fixed."
Well, you were game.
That was awful. Well, you could hear
This
over
was
the air
live,
the
right?
roar of the.
This was live, right?
This was live. Oh, absolutely live. Oh, I felt like
Couldn't fix it in the can.
no. So it was.
And who was shooting then? Who was directing then for CBC here?
Michael Sinelnikov. Wait a minute. I'm going not back far enough. Oh God, I'm going to forget people now. This is where I get off. At my age, my names go away from me.
Were you doing radio here as well?
I'm sorry. One you might know, Guy Bone.
Yeah, Guy Bone.
Yeah, Guy Bone, because he ran the opera company down in Quebec at one point.
Guy Bone adjudicated
Oh, really?
the
Yeah.
first Dominion Drama Festival I was
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
And
yeah,
gave me an award.
No wonder you like him.
I was the French Canadians were very good to me. Jacques Zouvier was another who
Yeah,
came down.
yes.
And this is DDF, of course, like you. I started
Yeah.
in DDF. Now, so you did radio and CBC here as well as TV?
Yeah, with Rupert Kaplan.
Yeah, right, very good.
Rupert Kaplan, who was a founder of CBC, as
Yes.
you probably realize, was also a radio actor himself. There was nobody who could act on radio better than Rupert. He had a voice that would just knock your socks off. Beautiful voice. And of course, knew his radio, his technician. And he, bless his heart, I was working at the Mountain Playhouse, and I was with Norma for 2 seasons and was her director as well, because there was a fellow, or lady actually, who fell by the wayside, and I was acting, for heaven's sake, and she said, "Well, I want you to direct it too." And I had never directed anything in my life. I knew something about it, but I had never done it. Well, I wound up doing 2 years with her. But when I heard about Rupert and all of that, I was dying because the one part of the media that I do like most is radio. Because radio drama brings about imagination. The viewer imagines. The lovely thing about radio is if you need to know that somebody's coming in a room, there are no rugs. You hear feet on a hardwood floor because there's no other way except by saying they're coming in that somebody can come into a room. Gravel, people, all the sound people. I loved it because people at home imagined the sets, the situation. And if you got two people together who heard exactly the same show and then say, describe to me this or describe to me that, the difference between them is immense because it would be based on their own experiences coming forward into the scene rather than being told what they are.
Right.
That to me is magic, when you can get 1,500 people listening and 1,500 different viewpoints. You can't do that on the theater.
Now,
And I just love it. I just wanted to say that with that kind of thing, Rupert, I went down to see Rupert and I said, is there a chance I could work with you? Because he had a group of people that he used. And he said, probably. He said, I don't know, because he knew I was working the Mountain Playhouse. And I said, I don't care if it's just a mailman coming and delivering the mail and going home. I said, it's the one medium that I just adore. And I said, it's also the one I do the least well. He looked at me, and I said, seriously, I have too strong a characteristic in my voice for it. You'll recognize me every single time I open my mouth. But if, I wouldn't mind just, he threw a script at me, he said, read that. I said, okay, I read it, took it back. He said, be in the studio at 10 o'clock on Saturday. I played the lead in the damn thing. He gave me the lead, like that.
well, because you showed humility.
Oh, I don't know what I showed. I was terrified with him. At first I was. But he was such a wonderful man. But he took no nonsense.
Good teacher.
Excellent teacher. And he, by the way, this is a sidebar, did you know that he was the only director in North America that O'Neill allowed his plays to be directed?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, and he did. With the Théâtre Nouveau Monde and all of that kind of stuff, he directed, a great many of O'Neill's plays.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that?
Now, you must have seen, after those early days of CBC television and radio here, you must have seen over the years, with the advent of independent film production, a lot of changes, and you've been in many of those films. You've done your kind of porky films that we shot here and stuff like that, but you've done a lot of serious work as well. Tell us a little bit about how the industry has changed in Montreal, the film and TV industry.
Strangely, it's become more demanding commercially, broadened artistically, and like all things in the arts, the more difficult it is to do, the greater the imagination that happens behind it to create it. And therefore, because of the stretch, usually the better it is. I've always thought that actors should struggle. Somebody who tells me they're not frightened on stage frightens me. Because they're going to get sloppy, they're not going to be doing the job right, they'll forget, there's so much that goes wrong. You have to be, it's like a runner in a race, you've got to be on your mettle. And that's the challenge of the live stuff. The stuff that isn't live you can perfect, but sometimes it's too slick. I've always thought that audiences may or may not know it, but there's a Russian roulette when they go to the theater. They want to see something happen. May I tell a story about myself? It sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, and in a way I think I am because I'm so grateful that it happened. But Sleuth, wonderful film if you saw the film, Olivier and Kane doing the roles. It was originally a stage play, marvelous. I played it in Saskatoon, and I love that show very much. Anyway, I was doing a movie here, and they had trouble with the play, the leading man. I don't know I can't remember what went wrong there, but they needed somebody to do sleuth in Saskatoon. I love Canada, don't you? Where we go. And they called to the director of the film I was in and said, can we borrow them? And so they let me go. So I went out there scared to death because the amount of memory work involved, and I had about 4 days to get it down.
It's huge.
Huge, 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 huge. He just never stopped talking. And the role is a joker, okay? And he likes to pull jokes on people. And of course, in the end, it tends to backfire on him, you might say. Well, there's a point in the play that he's a journalist, this man. He writes stories and stuff, where he takes a gun and he aims at the guest in his house. And just to make sure the guest knows what's going on, he fires it at a figurine on a mantelpiece, which blows to bits. And then comes back, scares the hell of the man, etc. and so forth. Anyway, of course, when I did it, I'd been in the business long enough, and I said, I hope you have a spare in case of, etc. Now, you know where it's going, so I will not hesitate. The time comes, wouldn't you know, on opening night. Yes, exactly. So I take the gun, and I aim it at him, and I aim it up at the mantelpiece. Click.
Nothing.
Well, you see, the trouble with something like that is that the figurine that's on the mantelpiece is wired at the bottom with a wire that goes through the canvas, behind of which there's a steel plate, and the poor sucker who's at the back there pulls it.
On cue.
Yeah, now, it's a visual cue. He's watching virtually the finger because it's so fast. So, of course, I go click, and the figurine goes into the thing. And there's this, I thought it for a second, and it was like the audience was in the air, and everything stopped. Just dead, like that. Nobody's moving, and including the guy. And I don't know what hit me, because you could never, ever, ever do this waiting and say, what will I do with it? You know. So I had it there, and then I brought it back, my hand over it. I said, and that's without the bullet. The audience flipped. He had to turn away. I went, I did, put it like, I did that intentionally. Then I walked around my desk to fill in the gap and started typing as if I was writing the story of what just happened.
Right.
And of course, at the end of the act, there's a bang and the body falls down the stairs.
Right.
The audience getting out in the lobby now wasn't sure. The Globe and Mail, everybody, the people were there to review that opening night. Not one person
Picked up on it.
picked up that the gun had misfired.
Right.
They all decided that it was part of the script.
Right.
Can you imagine getting away with that?
Bernard Slade would have thanked you.
Yeah, I think, oh my God. And I've often thought, when things like that happen, and they don't happen often, but when they do, I found myself, where did that come from?
But it's like, you know,
so amazing.
it's like a really good hockey player who somehow doesn't know why they reach their stick out just as a puck tips off of it into the goal.
Yeah,
It's instinct.
I know.
Now you became I heard you earlier. You got when you got your Montreal actor card. You were the second person,
Well,
and you asked for a special.
that, you see, I think that's probably up in the air about that. the reason I say it's up in the air, there could have been many people who might have been second person, do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because it didn't start with one at a time trying to get
Your
into the
number
union.
was going to be 2.
The number was going to be 2, and it should have been probably 2. But I was presented and said, okay, what, you know, because working with it and all that kind of stuff, what number do you want? Knowing that number 1 was gone, I thought to myself, I'd like 1,000. They said 1,000, and I said, yeah, I'd like to see how long it's going to take me to get up to 1,000.
Do you know how long it took?
I don't.
It'd be fun to find out.
I asked them if they knew how long did it. What were the dates for 999 and 1,001?
Yeah.
Maybe we could fit it in there, but of course it probably took about I don't know, 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But so my number is 1,000. 1,000.
I'm going to ask you, was there's obviously a couple, but one's in the theater or in film, radio you've already told me, mentor that you really look back to?
Yeah, I keep trying to deny because it sounds so obvious, but I have to say Harold Clurman. I really do. The man, he was such a genius, but not your egghead. He wasn't a nerd or anything close to it. He loved actors, he loved the theater, and he was a marvelous talker and funny man. And I suppose some of it has to do with the fact that he liked me. I mean, you can't walk away from that. When I say I think he did like me personally, I don't know, but he liked my work, but he got good work from me. It wasn't, it wasn't just me. I had some raw talent maybe, but he knew how to deal with me. Mm-hmm. When you get a lock-in with somebody like that, and they're good, and you're better because of it, what? You're going to say their liver? No, he taught me about Chekhov. It was so much.
I know you so much from various aspects of the things you've done for what you've given back through being on councils and stuff like that. Tell me what AFBS means for you, Active Fraternal Benefit Society.
Security. Security in the manner of, will I still be able to go on? Active Fraternal is good enough to make me look smart in terms of financial investments. It goes where governments have failed miserably in the health departments. It gives you that feeling of family because you have somebody to turn to, not just somebody that's sitting in an office, but somebody who's a friend, somebody who knows what it is, what you're doing, somebody who holds your hand, if you like, because artists are all children, we're all children, and says it's going to be all right, here's a Band-Aid, it'll go away in the morning. And you feel that you can get to the end of your days through your work, which is the benefit, that you've paid for it, not just in dollars, but by the work, the labor, and the artistry that you have, and the gift of caring about what you do. Hey, it's not bad.
It's beautiful. And are you proud of the fact that it was people like you, members, who started it and who own it?
Oh my. Yeah. The story that I get about equity and Active Fraternal Benefit Society stuff comes down to one story that I've never forgotten. I may not get my facts right on this, okay, because like all stories, when you tell somebody down here and 10 people later ask what they heard over here, it sometimes changes. But it's not far from wrong. The basis of it is right. There was a group of actors who were hired to go out to the West, Northwest actually, to do a show. And everybody was poor, everybody whatever, but they got out there and they did their show, only to discover that the business manager at intermission collected all the money and disappeared. They hadn't any money for food, for hotel, for travel, nothing. They were left stranded. It was the culmination of hundreds of like stories over history, but it was the one that broke the camel's back. Out of that, we all had enough sense to know that we had to cooperate, get together, and be able to refuse work. Have you ever asked an actor to refuse to eat the menu on the table? Don't think so. And it's that really got it started more than anything else. When you think of that, the rest falls into place very simply. And so out of it comes a place to live, PAL, in Toronto, for heaven's sake, for indigent actors and so forth. We looked after ourselves at that moment, and we have continued to look after ourselves to this day. If that isn't good stuff, there's nobody that want to cut our grants in the government. We are the one poverty area that looks after itself. Thank you. And they will say, oh, but we give money to this thing. No, you don't. We earned that money. It's our taxes. We got it back, and the public sees it's worthy enough to give to us. You have nothing to do with it.
That's fantastic. What advice would you give to a young actor starting out?
Couple. I learned from being at MIT and everything else. I didn't go through that with you, but I was offered, if I got through it all, a job in Detroit by General Motors, based on the fact I was taking mechanical engineering, metallurgy, and a thing called engineering administration, was basically factory control. You write one thesis for all three. I won't go into the mechanics of it because this is not what it's about. But if I got that, they would then put me into a school in Detroit to find out what my true aptitude would be and guaranteed so forth. And in those days, while I was going, everything would be paid for, room, board, the whole darn thing, plus $20,000 a year. In those days was a hell of a lot of money. It got me to thinking a lot later, if everybody wants to get into the theater quickly who have their minds in it to start with, but if you have the courage, do amateur theater and get a job. Put some money to one side to sustain yourself for a couple of years. That means get a good job. That way you'll be free not only to look for it, but to study with it and all of that. The second thing is, by doing good non-professional theater wherever you can find it, just do it. Just do it. You begin to find out what your weaknesses are. So when you do go to the school, go to a group, a school, a company that will give you